There's one thing I've learned in my life. No one can make you feel smaller than your own family. My name is Claire Harper, 32 years old, and I live in Los Angeles, the city of stars, dreams, and endless opportunities. But for me, it was also a place where the shadows of family secrets lurked behind every bright light. The city may be a place where everyone's dreams come true, but it's also where family loyalty can be manipulated, where love is transactional, and where you learn just how much you're worth when those who are supposed to love you the most don't see you at all. I'm the only daughter in the Harper family, and growing up, it was clear that my life, my future, was always going to be defined by one person, Ethan, my brother. He was the golden child, the heir to everything our father's wealth, the family business, and the legacy we were supposed to carry on. He was the one who everyone looked up to, the one who always had the spotlight. And I was always in the background, doing the work, but never getting the recognition. I had my own dreams, my own ambitions, but no matter how hard I worked, how many ideas I brought to the table, how many hours I spent trying to prove myself, I was never going to be enough for them. Ethan was always the one who received praise, and I was left to be the dutiful daughter, quiet, unassuming, and invisible. It didn't bother me at first. After all, that's how things worked in our family, right? But then came a defining moment that changed everything. It was Christmas Eve. The house was full of family, laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the warmth of the fire. I had been working tirelessly for weeks, but I didn't mind. After all, this was the time of year when family came together, and for once, I thought it could be different. But when my father stood at the head of the table, glass in hand, and looked proudly at Ethan, everything shifted. Son, you're the one who will take over the company. Everything will be yours. The words rang in my ears, as though time itself had stopped. My father, the man I had worked so hard to impress, the man who never seemed to notice the blood, sweat, and tears I had poured into everything, was making it clear once and for all, Ethan was the future. Not me. It wasn't just the announcement itself that stunned Mate, was the casualness with which it was said. It was the certainty in his eyes as he placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, as if this had been decided long ago, as if my years of dedication had meant nothing. The weight of it hit me like a ton of bricks. My entire life's work, my sacrifices, the late nights spent keeping the business running, it all meant nothing. The legacy wasn't mine, it was Ethan's. I sat there, frozen, but I didn't show it. I could feel the sting in my chest, but I forced a smile. I smiled because I knew something they didn't. I knew that I wasn't going to let this go. Ethan might have been the heir to the family business, but I was going to claim something much more valuable. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this moment define me. I wasn't going to stay quiet, to let the years of hard work I put in be erased just because I wasn't born a man. I would show them, all of them, that there was more at stake than just family titles and expectations. I had something they hadn't counted on, the truth. I wasn't just a daughter in the background anymore. I was about to bring everything they'd hidden to the light. And that's when the game changed. The next morning, I walked into Harper Enterprises like I had 100 times before. But today was different. Today, I wasn't the quiet, dutiful daughter. Today, I wasn't just a piece in a game I never agreed to play. Today, I was going to take control. The office felt too familiar. The polished marble floors, the sleek, glass-walled conference rooms, the low hum of employees typing away at their desks. It all seemed like a well-oiled machine, the product of years of my father's hard work. But behind those walls, there were lies that I had been blind to for too long. And I had a plan to expose every last one of them. I stepped into my office, closed the door behind me, and sat at my desk. The usual morning chaos around the office phones ringing, printers whirring, employees hustling from meeting to meeting didn't bother me. I was used to it. But today, the noise seemed distant, almost irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was what I was about to uncover. For months, I had started to notice strange patterns in the business. Financial transactions that didn't add up. Invoices from vendors we never worked with. The company seemed to be flourishing, but I could feel something was wrong, like the foundations were cracked beneath the polished surface. I had the luxury of time to dig, time to investigate. And I did. I had access to the company's files, the financial statements, the hidden corners of our operations where nobody bothered to look. What I found was worse than I could have ever imagined. I pulled up the first document, my hands steady as I typed in the password to access the private financial records. My eyes scanned through the numbers, each one more damning than the last. Money was being funneled out of the company, not for investments, not for growth, but into secret accounts under names I didn't recognize. I kept scrolling, digging deeper into the paperwork. And it hit me, this wasn't just some mistake. It was deliberate. It was a conspiracy to drain the company dry. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. My father, the man who built everything, had sold us all out. He had been working with a group of investors behind the scenes, a group that had no interest in the company's future, only in profiting from its collapse. And my brother Ethan had been in on it. He knew everything, but he wasn't the one pulling the string, she was the puppet. My father had been grooming him for the role, but he wasn't just setting him up to run the business. He was setting Ethan up as the fall guy, the one who would take the blame when everything went wrong. I could hardly believe what I was reading. My heart raced, but there was a sense of clarity, a sense of power in knowing what was going on. I had the upper hand now. I saved the documents and shut off my computer. There was no turning back. The plan was in motion, and there was no way to stop it now. I grabbed my phone and sent a quick text to David, my most trusted colleague, someone who had been with me through thick and thin, someone who had always questioned the strange decisions in the company. Meet me in the conference room in 30 minutes. I have something you need to see. 30 minutes later, David was sitting across from me, his brow furrowed with confusion. "Claire, what's going on?" he asked. He'd been with the company almost as long as I had, and we'd seen things go south in recent months, but nothing like this. I slid a thick folder across the table. "This is what I've been working on," I said, my voice steady. "The company's been compromised, and it goes all the way to the top." David's eyes widened as he flipped through the documents. This is insane," he whispered, shaking his head. "You're telling me?" "I'm telling you that my father has been stealing from the company." I cut him off. "And Ethan's been helping him. But they didn't count on me finding this." David sat back, processing what I'd just revealed. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice low. I looked him square in the eye. "I'm going to expose them, every last one of them, and I'm going to make sure they don't get away with it." David leaned in, his expression now a mixture of fear and admiration. "You're serious, aren't you?" "Dead serious," I replied. "This ends now. I'm not letting them take everything we built for their own gain." The next 24 hours felt like a blur. I knew I had to act quickly. My father and Ethan were planning a meeting with investors the following day to finalize the shady deal that had been going on for months. I needed to get the information out before they could cover their tracks. I called a lawyer I trusted, Sarahan, handed her all the evidence. "I need you to prepare a statement," I said. "We're going public with this, tomorrow." The following morning, as I walked into the office, everything seemed normal. The same buzz, the same urgency. But beneath that calm surface, I knew things were about to explode. I had everything I needed to bring them down. As I walked past my father's office, I saw Ethan standing there with him, both of them talking quietly, their expressions too calm, too rehearsed. It made my blood boil. Today, everything was going to change. The day of the meeting arrived, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I walked into the office like any other day, but my mind was 1,000 miles away. The usual sounds of phones ringing, printers whirring, and employees buzzing around seemed distant. All I could hear was the thundering sound of my heartbeat, the rush of adrenaline that had been building inside me for the last 48 hours. Today, everything would change. I was no longer the daughter who stood silently in the background. I had a plan, and I was about to set it into motion. The paperwork was in place. My lawyer Sarah had everything ready, and the moment the family meeting ended, I would strike. They were going to face the consequences of their actions. As I passed by my father's office, I saw Ethan and him deep in conversation. Ethan looked calm, the usual cocky smile on his face, but there was something off about the way he was talking to Dad. His expression didn't seem like someone who was about to inherit the company. It was almost as if he was being given the job, not out of ability, but out of necessity, like a reluctant pawn being placed on a chessboard. I shook my head and walked past, my steps steady but my mind racing. In the break room, I bumped into Laura, one of the junior associates who had always been friendly, but she looked at me with wide eyes today. "Claire, are you okay?" she asked, her voice hushed, as if she knew something was off. I smiled, my lips tight. "I'm fine, Laura, just getting ready for a big day," I said, avoiding her gaze. I didn't have time to explain, not yet. The storm that was coming needed to happen on my terms. By 3 p.m., the family was gathered in the boardroom for the meeting. I stood outside the door for a moment, gathering my thoughts. The last time I'd stepped into that room, I was just another Harper-Silent, unnoticed and obedient. But now I had the power. I wasn't about to let them walk all over me anymore. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. My father, my mother, Ethan, and a handful of the company's top executives were seated at the long conference table. Their conversations faded as they noticed me enter. All eyes turned toward me, but I didn't flinch. "Claire," my father said, his tone stiff but polite. "You're just in time." I nodded, walking to the empty chair beside Ethan. The air felt suffocating, like a storm was about to break, but I didn't show it. I wasn't here to argue, not yet. "Dad, Ethan, I need to talk to you all about something," I began, my voice steady but loud enough to command attention. "Claire, we're in the middle of a meeting," Ethan started, but I cut him off. "No, Ethan, this meeting is for you, but I have something important to say first." Everyone looked at each other, confused, as I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "I've been doing some digging, and I think it's time for you all to see something." I tossed the papers onto the table with a firm thud. The room fell silent as they all stared at the documents. I could see Ethan's face shift from confident to confused, his brow furrowing slightly. "What is this?" my father asked, his voice a little tighter now. "These are financial records," I said, my voice cool. "Records that you, Dad, and you, Ethan, tried to hide. This is how you've been running the company into the ground for months now." I could see my father's jaw clench, his face turning pale. Ethan's eyes darted nervously between the papers and me. They didn't expect this. "These accounts here," I pointed to one of the highlighted sections, "are where the company's profits have been funneled to shadow accounts. And these," I flipped to another page. "These payments are for kickbacks and bribes to other companies just to keep the deal going. Not only is this illegal, but it's also completely unethical." For a moment, the room was dead quiet. My father, usually so composed, looked like he was struggling to keep his cool. "Ethan," I said, turning to him, "you've been playing the role of the dutiful son, but you've been blind to what's been going on. Did you even know about this?" Ethan opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. He was visibly shaken, caught in the web of his own ignorance. My father's eyes shifted between the papers and me, his expression darkening. "Claire, what are you trying to do here?" My father's voice was low, but there was a tremor in it now. Fear. The first crack in his unshakable confidence. "You're accusing us of—" "I'm not accusing anyone of anything," I interrupted, standing up and moving toward the end of the table where the rest of the board members sat. "I'm showing you the truth. You've been embezzling, and your son is complicit in all of it. The company is about to collapse, and you've been blind to it all because you've been too busy playing power games. I'm done watching it happen." There was a long pause as the weight of my words sank in. Ethan looked lost, like he didn't know whether to defend himself or shrink away. My father's face had turned ashen, and I could see his mind racing, trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. Finally, my father slammed his fist on the table. "You think you can just come in here and destroy everything we've built? Just like that?" "No, Dad, you're the one who's destroyed everything. I'm just the one telling everyone about it." I turned to face the board members, my voice ringing with authority. "You've all been kept in the dark, just like I was. But it's time you knew the truth. The company isn't just yours anymore. It's mine too, and I'm going to make sure it survives, with or without you." My heart was pounding in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I had their attention now, and nothing could stop me from taking control. The following days felt like the calm before the storm. After the explosive family meeting, I expected resistance, but nothing could have prepared me for what was coming next. The Harper family was about to face its reckoning, and I had become the one to deliver the judgment. The truth was out in the open, and the pieces were finally falling into place. But no one had expected me to fight back like this. No one had expected Claire Harper, the overlooked daughter, to be the one to tear down their empire. The tension in the office was palpable. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me as I walked through the halls. It wasn't just the usual whispering today. The air was thick with speculation. I could almost hear the murmurs behind the closed doors. Some employees were cautiously offering me knowing glances, as if they, too, knew what was at stake. But then, there was Ethan. The morning after the meeting, he came to my office. He was trying to appear calm, but I could see the nervous energy crackling beneath his facade. "Claire, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained, almost apologetic. I didn't even look up from my desk as I clicked through some reports. "About what?" I replied, not giving him the satisfaction of my full attention. "This isn't the way, you know," he continued, stepping closer to my desk. "Dad's not handling this well, and neither is Mom. You're throwing everything away. Don't you get it? You're destroying us all." I met his gaze for the first time, and for a second, I saw a glimpse of the vulnerable boy I used to know. But that boy was gone. Ethan wasn't the brother I once looked up to, was just another pawn in this game, one I no longer had any intention of playing by their rules. "Ethan," I said coolly, my voice sharp, "I'm not the one destroying anything. You and Dad have been pulling the strings all along. Don't try to act like this is all some mistake. You're just mad that the truth is finally coming to light, and you're afraid of losing everything you've never worked for." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might lash out. But instead, he just stood there, shaking his head in disbelief. "You don't understand," he muttered. "This isn't just about the company. It's about family. We're family." I tilted my head, staring at him for a moment, before standing up. "You think this is about family?" I took a step toward him. "No, Ethan, this is about betrayal. You've been given everything without lifting a finger. And now, you'll have to face the consequences of that." Before he could respond, I walked past him, leaving him standing in the middle of the room, his face a mixture of confusion and frustration. But I wasn't interested in his empty words anymore. I was done listening to the excuses. That afternoon, I called a press conference. I had everything set in motion. The lawyers had prepared the documents, and the media was ready. I couldn't wait any longer. The world needed to know what had been happening behind the closed doors of Harper Enterprises. The room was filled with cameras and reporters as I stood at the podium. The air was electric with anticipation. This was it. I took a deep breath and began speaking. "Good afternoon. My name is Claire Harper, and I'm here today to tell you the truth about what's been going on inside Harper Enterprises, the company that my father built and my brother, Ethan, has been running under false pretenses." I paused, letting the words sink in. For years, my family has hidden the truth. The company has been embezzled, funds diverted, and deals made under the table. Today, I'm here to tell you all that everything you've been led to believe is a lie. A hush fell over the room as cameras clicked furiously, catching every word, every pause. The reporters were riveted, but it wasn't just the shocking details that had their attention. It was the calm, collected woman standing before them. I wasn't the scared, overlooked daughter anymore. I was the storm. As a former executive of this company, I have all the evidence. Contracts, financial records, and payment trails all pointing to one thing: corruption at the highest level. I am not here to destroy my family, but to expose them for the lies they've been feeding you for years. I let that hang in the air for a moment, watching as the shockwaves rippled through the room. Tomorrow, I will be releasing all the documents to the public. This is just the beginning. The truth is coming out, and no one, not even my father or my brother, can hide from it any longer. Later that evening, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Claire, what have you done?" she demanded. "You're making a huge mistake." I could hear her voice shaking, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. "I did what I had to do, Mom. For once, I'm doing what's right for me." "You've ruined everything. Your father is devastated. He doesn't deserve this, and neither does Ethan." "Ethan doesn't deserve anything." "Neither does Dad," I replied. They had their chance to do the right thing, but instead, they chose greed. Now they'll have to face the consequences. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, quietly, my mother spoke. "You've lost us, Claire. We're done." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words. But I didn't feel guilt. I felt free. This was the storm. And now, there was no turning back. The morning after the press conference, the media was buzzing. The story of Claire Harper, the daughter of the powerful Harper Enterprises family, exposing her father and brother's illegal activities, had spread like wildfire. It wasn't just local news anymore. It was national. Headlines everywhere read, "Family business corruption exposed. Harper Enterprises in crisis." I didn't care about the headlines. What mattered now was that the truth was out, and there was no going back. I walked into the office that morning with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. The whispers and nervous glances of employees didn't faze me. I had done the right thing, and now I had to prepare for the fallout. When I passed Ethan's office, I noticed he wasn't there. His door was wide open, but the usual hum of his phone calls and meetings was absent. The sight didn't surprise me. Ethan had always been the golden child, but he had never been the one to handle pressure. He was good at looking pretty in front of a crowd, but the weight of real leadership? It was crushing him. Dad's office was a different story. I knocked once, and without waiting for an answer, I opened the door. My father was sitting behind his massive desk, staring at the pile of papers in front of him. His face was ashen, his normally sharp features now tired and drawn. He looked up as I entered, his eyes narrowing. There was no love in his gaze, no pride, no admiration, only anger and defeat. "You've done it now, Claire," he said, his voice low and tight with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? To the legacy I built?" I walked toward the desk, my heels clicking against the marble floor. "I've done what needed to be done, Dad. You chose to destroy this family, and I'm the one who had to clean it up." He shot up from his chair, his hands slamming the desk. "You've ruined everything," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You've taken away my future, Ethan's future. You think this is justice? This is just you tearing everything apart because you were never good enough." The insult stung, but I refused to flinch. "Maybe you were right about one thing, Dad," I said coldly. "Maybe I was never good enough, at least not in your eyes. But I'm good enough for me, and that's what matters now. What matters now is fixing what you broke." He opened his mouth to retort, but his words caught in his throat. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the years of resentment and unspoken words hanging thick in the room. I wasn't the little girl anymore, waiting for his approval. I was the woman who was finally taking control of her life. "I've already called a meeting with the board," my father said, his voice now more controlled but laced with bitterness. "You won't win this fight, Claire. You think they'll side with you? You're nothing but a betrayal to everything we've built." I crossed my arms and gave him a slow, deliberate smile. "We'll see about that." The board meeting was a disaster. I had no illusions about how things would go. My father had spent years cultivating relationships with the board members, making sure they owed him favors. But that morning, as I walked into the sleek, glass-walled conference room, I felt an unfamiliar sense of power. My father, Ethan, and the board members were already seated, tense and silent. As I entered, all eyes turned to me, and for the first time, I felt like I was in control. I wasn't the daughter they ignored anymore. I was the one who held the cards. "Let's get this over with," I said, walking to the front of the room. I could hear the murmurs from the board members, unsure of where things were headed. "I have something to show all of you." I placed a stack of legal documents on the table. These were the same documents I had given to my lawyer, Sarah. They outlined the illegal transactions, the embezzled funds, the bribes to outside firms, and the way my father and Ethan had been siphoning money out of the company for their personal gain. The room fell silent. I could see the board members exchanging looks, their faces unreadable. My father's hand trembled as he reached for the papers. "What is this, Claire?" he asked, his voice quieter now, with an edge of fear. "You know exactly what it is, Dad," I replied, my tone sharp. "It's the truth, and I'm going to make sure everyone here knows it. You can't hide from this anymore. The media already has most of the details. And now, it's time for you to face the music." Ethan, who had been sitting in silence, finally spoke up, his voice trembling. "Claire, please, this isn't how it should be. This is family. We can fix this. We don't need to bring everything out into the public." I looked at him, not with anger, but with pity. "You don't get it, do you, Ethan? This isn't about family. This is about truth, about what's right. And what you and Dad have been doing isn't right." The board meeting ended in chaos. Some of the board members began to question my father's decisions. Others were too shocked to speak. The room, once filled with the calm hum of corporate politics, was now filled with tension. But I knew something they didn't. My father and Ethan's power had always rested on their control of information. And I had just taken that away. Later that evening, I received a call from Sarah. "Claire," she said, her voice shaky with excitement. "We've got them. The board is backing you. We've got enough evidence to take them to court." For the first time in years, I felt a sense of relief. I had won. The next day, I walked into Harper Enterprises as its new CEO. The board had made their decision. My father was ousted, and Ethan was no longer in charge. He was forced to step down after all the lies were exposed. I had done it. I had taken everything back. But as I sat at the head of the conference table, ready to take the reins, I realized something that shocked me. I didn't feel the rush of victory I thought I would. Instead, I felt a deep sadness. I had won the battle, but at what cost? My family was broken. It had been weeks since the dust settled. The media frenzy had finally died down, but the damage to my family was irreversible. Harper Enterprises was no longer the powerhouse it had been under my father's control, and my family, once united by their shared business legacy, was now fractured beyond repair. But as the weeks turned into months, I realized something. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I stood in front of the glass windows in my office, looking out over Los Angeles. The city that once felt so overwhelming now seemed different, full of possibility. I was the CEO now, not just in name, but in every sense. The company had been rebuilt from the ground up. We had cleaned house, fired the corrupt executives, and brought in a team I could trust. But what I didn't expect was how lonely the top could be. The first day after I took over as CEO, everything felt new. The company wasn't just a symbol of my father's success anymore. It was mine. I ran it, I made the decisions, and I had complete control. But with control came an immense weight. I didn't have anyone to turn to note my father. Not Ethan. Not the people I thought were on my side. I had fought for this, but I had paid a high price. My family was gone, and in its place was a shell of a company I had to rebuild from the ground up. I spent long nights in the office. My only company, the sound of the city below, and the hum of my computer. But I never regretted the decision I'd made. The truth had set me free, even if it had cost me everything I had ever known. Then, one day, I received an unexpected call. It was from my mother. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to hear her voice. "Claire?" Her voice sounded fragile, almost unfamiliar. "No, things have been difficult, but I wanted to talk to you. I'm sorry." I sat back in my chair, stunned. My mother had always been the quiet one in the family, the one who never stood up for me, never challenged my father's decisions. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to hear what she had to say, but I listened. "I've seen what you've done," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "You were right. You were always right. Just couldn't see it before. But I know now, you didn't do this to hurt anyone. You did it because you believed in the truth. And I respect that, Claire." Tears pricked my eyes. For years, I had been waiting for her to say something, anything to acknowledge my pain, my struggle. And now, at the most unexpected moment, she was finally admitting that she understood. I don't know what happens now, Claire, but I want you to know I'm proud of you. I just wish it hadn't come to this. I took a deep breath, fighting back the tears. I've lost everything, Mom, but maybe that's okay. Maybe this is the only way to find who I really am. There was a long silence before she spoke again. We'll figure it out, Claire, one day at a time. As I walked through the halls of Harper Enterprises, I realized that while the battle had been won, the real work was just beginning. The company was in good hands now, but I still had to prove myself. I still had to earn the respect of the board, the employees, and the investors. But more than that, I had to earn my own respect. A few weeks later, I sat across from the board members, presenting a new vision for the company. We were no longer just a legacy business of my father's. We were something new, something I had built from the ground up. A company that wasn't just about profit, but about integrity, growth, and honesty. The room was quiet as they listened to my proposal, their faces a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. But when I finished, there was a long pause. Then, one by one, the board members nodded in agreement. The next morning, I sat in my office overlooking the city once again. But this time, I wasn't looking at it as someone trying to fill someone else's shoes. I was looking at it as the person I had become stronger, more determined, and more confident than I had ever been before. I didn't need my family's approval anymore. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was capable. I had proven it to myself. And that, I realized, was worth more than any inheritance. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through Claire's story. It's been a ride full of twists, turns, and moments of pure emotional intensity, and I hope you found as much inspiration in Claire's journey as I did in telling it. If you were moved by her strength, her resilience, and her ability to rise above betrayal, then please don't forget to hit that like button. Your support means the world and helps this channel grow, so I can bring more powerful stories like this one. Feel free to share this video with anyone who needs a little inspiration, whether they're facing personal challenges, battling family dynamics, or fighting for their own independence. Claire's story is one that speaks to anyone who's ever felt overlooked or underestimated. And trust me, someone out there will be inspired by it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I've got more incredible content coming your way that you won't want to miss. Click the notification bell so you're the first to know when the next chapter of powerful stories drop. Once again, thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to share even more inspiring tales in the future. Until next time, stay strong, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone make you feel small.